Commissioner Steiner.
I might as well be the third former state commissioner to speak today. And I'm going to go to I hope, the heart of the issue. If you look at the states that have made substantial progress, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Louisiana, Tennessee, we could argue about the exact list, New Hampshire, you don't see, except in Washington, D.C., much success for tough accountability. We tried to do it in New York, we tried to do it as a nation, and we got very marginal increases out of No Child Left Behind. We got some, but very marginal. If you look across the world, on Arnie Duncan's old notion of loose, tight, 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 loose, tight, meaning you give lots of flexibility and then you hold accountable. And then you look at the rest of the world, they don't do it that way, not the top performing countries. They get tight at the front end on curriculum, on professionalism for teachers, on really intelligent assessments that, on your point, do not give great individual flexibility at the local level. And then professionals create good results. And in fact, in the very top performing countries, you don't need accountability very much because just as in other high performing professions, professionals are doing good work. And so I have a fundamental question about this whole idea. We earlier today were tiptoeing around even putting curriculum of high quality into the worst performing schools, let alone for the entire state, as Shanghai, Singapore, Switzerland, Holland, right, would take for granted. Are we so frightened of actually saying we have a high quality policy in education for all schools and all districts that we have to chase this ghost of accountability as if after doing everything wrong, we're going to hammer you into doing it right by holding you accountable at the far end?
And perhaps one of the other panelists, Mark, will speak to this. That's not a dodge.
Sounds.
Let me offer you my perspective in our review of some of these other international examples that you cited. One of the things that before we get to comparing, anything from curriculum instruction policies to accountability and governance policies, financing policies, we really want to understand culture. And that is to say, what is the fabric that holds that sovereign nation together? Like, what are the things in their history that would say to you that they often go unspoken, but basically hold that populace together? And in a lot of the countries in which you cited, their cultural values are very, very different from ours in the United States. One example of this is our individuality, our notion of freedom, that we can kind of make our decisions. And that value has found its way, I think necessarily as a democracy, into our institutions, local school boards, into our state board of education, into our state schoolhouses, into our courts. And I don't think it's necessarily to say that, any one state is afraid of instituting or saying, like, this is a practice in which all the others should adopt. I think the ability to say that is weighed against how much trust there is among the adults that are saying this is the direction in which to go. And again, I go back to point to places like Massachusetts, perhaps not New Jersey, but New Hampshire and Vermont, perhaps, in which they've worked on this for decades. Mm-hmm. They've worked to build up those relationships, to create the sustainability that we were talking about earlier that Dr. Grasmick referenced. It makes a difference when a superintendent is in a system for 5, 7, and 10 years. It makes a difference when they have built a set of individuals behind them that can continue with that torch. And the same rules apply within a state house or on a state board of ed.
Agreed, but they didn't do it by hammering people at the back end.
I would argue that there were some very dramatic interventions that I can point to both internationally and nationally, in which when the system was not working as it was intended, people stepped in. But their ability to step in, and for those that were in those circumstances of failure to listen, came about, again, because there was trust before. The support had been
20 years before Massachusetts stepped in with a receiver in the worst possible circumstances in one district.
Yes.
Sadly, I think Jason made an important, valid point. If we only let totally responsible adults drive cars, we would not need speed limits or traffic cops or traffic lights or stop signs. But we have them all because we give everybody driver's licenses. It's America.